All right, we got Twitch. We've got Kick. And YouTube and Facebook. We are live. Well, thank you, stream, for being a little flexible today. We're starting a little bit later than normal. It has been kind of a wild week, to say the least. So last Wednesday, during our last stream, I wasn't feeling well. Ended up taking off a little early and heading home and getting some rest. And then Thursday, we actually had to take our daughter to the hospital. And she had some stuff going on with her blood platelets, and that was a little very scary. And so then the whole weekend we were basically fight or flight, just trying to get to the next appointment and get her treatment and get everything sorted out. And then after that, I mean, we kind of jumped right back into the week, which was wild. And we basically didn't get much time to rest this weekend because we were just so focused on trying to make sure our daughter was okay. And so I won't go into everything, but short summary of blood platelets: 150,000 is normal. She was down at 4,000, which is like below critical. And then we took her in on Monday to get her blood tested again, and we were hoping for 20,000, but it was all the way up at 160,000. So this had to be some kind of miracle. Like, of course, the doctors wouldn't say as much. They're just happy that she's recovering. But we were expecting months of recovery and blood draws and appointments and things like that. But yeah, at her first check-in, she was already back to normal. So we're going to check back in about a month and make sure that she's okay. But yeah, no, she's happy and healthy and running around back at preschool, and she's doing well. So a little bit of a scare there for our family, but yeah, ultimately things are back to normal. Hey Tohu, glad to see you here. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's just been it's been an incredibly stressful and anxious week, and so I think it just finally caught up with me, the not feeling well, and then the obviously much more pressing stuff that happened after that, and then jumping right back into things. I think my body was just like, nope, we're done, we're sleeping. that's what we're doing. And so my wife is incredible. She handled things really well this morning with getting our daughter to school, and usually we try to tag team a little bit, but man, I was so out of it. And I woke up and I was like, man, I need to stream in I think it was like 15 minutes at that point, and I've still got bedhead and I need to take a shower. And so thank you all for being flexible on the time for this stream, because man, that was a crazy week. I cannot it like still hasn't hit me yet, just like the severity of the situation. And so I'm glad that we're through it. is what it seems like. Nice, comforting kickbot here. And you know what we do with kickbots? We kick the bots. That was bad. Okay, let's jump into some stuff this morning. Tohu, how are you doing? I'm glad to see you here. Let's see. I haven't prepared as much as I typically would for a stream for those same reasons, but let's take a look at what's going on in Christianity this week. Looks like we have something from the Pope. Christian love is not evasion, but decision. That sounds nice. I'm not totally sure what that means. You're doing well, having the most expensive pint of beer. Ooh. What constitutes the most expensive pint of beer? Also, I don't think I've ever had beer in a pint before. It sounds very aesthetically, I guess pleasing would be the word. Like it's just like it's a pint. It feels like, oh, this is a beer, versus like, oh, look, I'm having a beer. I don't know. That might just be me, but yeah, I hope it's good. I hope it tastes good, especially if it is really very expensive. Let's see, something about Israel. Let's see. A pint is just a unit of measurement. Yeah, but here in America, at least in how I've grown up, we never typically have beers in pints. But a pint of beer has a nice ring to it. And like you see it in movies. I'm sure like if I went to bars regularly, then perhaps I might have had a pint of beer in my life. But no, like at most a bottle or a can or something like that. But honestly, most of my alcohol experience comes from Lord of the Rings. And so that is not the most realistic source of information. And I'm aware of that. In the UK, it's always pints. Yeah. That's what I've heard, and like I said, it just sounds, as someone who has not grown up in their early drinking years, around that, it just seems cool. So, and I guess in Norway too, at least that's what the person at the bar said. Very cool. All right, we got someone from Kick trying to get us to 1,000 followers. Tong Happy. I'm fairly certain that you're a bot. But if you want to add us on Discord, then you can go ahead and click the link tree in the description below, and you can add us on Discord. But sharing your stream to a community. Yeah, that's okay. We're not interested. But hey, feel free, if you're interested in what we're doing here, to add us on Discord. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so Jerusalem. Orthodox Church in Gaza City ordered to evacuate. Jerusalem church leaders discuss local Christian issues with senators. Let's click into this. The Times of Israel. Will it let us look at this one? I don't know, chat. Let's see. We got our ads. Live update. What does that mean? August 27th. Well, it's obviously a new update, but... Alright, I'm trying to get rid of some ads without absolutely covering everything. Let's try that. Well, we zoomed in on an ad. And we got another pop-up. Okay, and that's cut off. Alright, chat. We're gonna play around with the dimensions here. Okay, that's not too bad. We can cover up some ads with the chat and still see the rest. Okay. Jerusalem church leaders discuss local Christians' issues with U.S. senators who back arms embargo on Israel. Now, I will say up front, I'm not the most well-versed on this issue, mostly because I'm not super well-versed on any sort of global politics. That's just not my strong suit. Why not use an ad block extension? You know, that would be very smart, and I'm going to look into that off stream. I don't know why that didn't occur to me, but thank you for saying it. I appreciate that. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm not super well versed in global politics. I know this has a lot of strong opinions on many sides. I am anti-hunger, anti-starvation, anti-bombing. We'll say that is my stance going into this. I don't like to see people suffering. But let's see what the Times of Israel has to say. And of course, this is, I guess, the Times of Israel, so we're probably going to get one perspective on this. Okay. Concerns of the Christian communities in the region. Humanitarian situation in Gaza. And the well-being of Christians. Blocking arms sales to Israel. Is that okay? So they're just saying it happened. That is not a very robust article. Okay, live now. Okay. In Gaza, Army chief says ultra-Orthodox must enlist as IDF readies to widen the offensive. Israel threatens to hunger monitors. Target hunger monitors funding if Gaza famine report not retracted. Temporary deal is being discussed. Now that's a lot of fancy words, but it seems as if Israel is cutting funding. What is the hunger? Hunger. But I'm wondering if they do more than that. IDF chief, more ads. Again, gonna fix that later. Met with UN World Food Program Executive Director. Humanitarian efforts. days after the WFP-linked integrated food security phase. Oh my gosh. All these government names. Okay, they declared famine in northern Gaza for the first time, which Israel rejected, accusing the report of relying on biased and self-interest sources originating from Hamas. Claimed in 2024 that the strip was already in full-blown famine, and now it's at catastrophic levels. Okay. So it looks like we've got some folks trying to get food to Gaza, and Israel does not want to do that. Let me see if I can find something credible about the situation, because I feel like I need to learn a little bit more. About this situation. Let's see. Let's take a look. Let's see what TBN Israel has to say. Again, it's an Israeli source, so we'll take it with a grain of salt.
At this point in time, all of you, or at least most of you, have heard the statement, Gaza is the biggest open prison in the world. So today we're going deep into that story. The story of the Gaza Strip, its history, its people, its borders, and who benefits from you thinking that it's the biggest prison in the world. The Gaza Strip is a small piece of land on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea. It borders Egypt on the southwest and Israel on the east and the north. People have lived in Gaza for millennia, but for today's purposes, we're focusing on the history starting in 1947. In 1947, the entire land is inhabited both by Arabs and Jews and controlled by the British Empire. It's already riddled with violence, fueled by competing national aspirations. Then the UN proposes the partition plan, a two-state solution with Jerusalem as its international city. The Palestinians were to receive the Western Galilee, the Sumerian highlands, and the coastal plains south of Jaffa, including the Gaza Strip. Jewish leaders accepted this plan reluctantly, of course, and the Palestinians, along with the Arab countries around them, opposed any partition leading to a Jewish state, igniting the 1948 war. Following Egypt into war were Iraq, Jordan, that back then was known as Transjordan, Lebanon, and Syria. The Egyptians attack from within Egypt, and this is important to note, from Egypt, they washed through the Gaza Strip and then up the coastal plains towards Tel Aviv. And with much effort, this wasn't at all an easy battle. The young state of the time pushes them back to the Gaza Strip, establishing that first sliver as we know it today. At the end of the war, Gaza was occupied by Egypt. What's interesting is they never annexed the Gaza Strip. It forever remained, even under Egyptian control, an area controlled by military governance, but not fully citizens or people with full.
Hitting your goals has nothing to do with discipline.
Okay,
The real culprit is friction, and it slowly erodes your progress. Unlike what most people
Rights. Egypt maintained control over Gaza for 19 years. And in that 19-year period, it's not like everything is peaceful in the Gaza Strip. There's a ton of refugees that have sort of come in the Gaza Strip. There's a lot of violence, and they're under military control. But not only that, there was no fence back then. So those communities in the Gaza Strip continuously throughout the period go out and murder Jewish communities that border them. In 1967, the 19-year control of the Egyptians in the Gaza Strip ends with the Six-Day War. What was that war? A quick reminder, it's this incredibly swift six-day battle where Israel quadruples its landmass in a strategic attempt to push hostile forces further away from its borders and to gain some strategic depth. This is when Gaza first came under Israeli control. Over the years, tension between Gaza and Israel continued to rise. But in 1993, things seemed like they could change for the best with the start of the Oslo Accords.
Finally, the time is approaching when there will be safety in Israel's house, when the Palestinian people will write their own destiny.
So sidebar, what are the Oslo Accords? The Oslo Accords were a series of agreements starting in the early 90s that were supposed to gradually bring together the Israelis on the one side, the Palestinians on the other side, with the ultimate goal of having two states, one Jewish state called Israel, one Palestinian state called Palestine. The Gaza Strip was part of that agreement. The first Oslo Accords is basically this general statement of, we accept your existence as a people, which sounds basic to us today, but back then there was a lot. The next set of accords was 1995, and they go way farther into detail of where the borders are going to be, what the future Palestinian state is going to look like. And again, all of this encompasses also the Gaza Strip. At the same time as the Israeli government and the Palestinian leadership are negotiating, there are extremists on both sides who are strongly opposed to these accords. In Israel, an extremist murders our then Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. In the Palestinian side, you have the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, Palestinian terrorist organizations who do everything they can to stop the accords. And what does everything they can mean? It means
Okay, so Hamas is a Palestinian terrorist organization, at least according to this video. But I believe Hamas is, according to this, according to the articles, according to everything that I've heard, seems like they're wanting to stop these accords, the Oslo Accords, which seems like it would kind of settle the conflict. I'm still a little confused. I'm still a little still learning chat, but let's get there.
means they're murdering Israeli civilians in the streets of our country. In 2000, we have this big attempt to jumpstart the Oslo Accords, in which the U.S., of course, the Israelis and the Palestinians come together in Camp David in the U.S. to try and rekindle this ongoing discussion. Ehud Barak is our prime minister at the time. He shows up with whatever mandate he had from the government, and Yasser Arafat, Palestinian leader, shows up. And for whatever reason, he can't or will not move on with the accords. If you look at the big picture timeline of history, that last Camp David meeting is sort of the last-ditch attempt to restart the Oslo Accords. After that, we really never have an effective one. In fact, the Palestinians start what we now call the Second Intifada in late 2000, which is a 5-year ongoing terrorist attack on the heart of Israel.
Okay, let's go back. I want to hear that again.
Second Intifada in late 2000, which is a 5-year ongoing one. In fact, the Palestinians start what we now call the Second Intifada in late 2000, which is a 5-year ongoing terrorist attack on the heart of Israel.
So, Palestine terrorist attack on Israel. Again, according to Israel. It's so strange. We're so far displaced, and it's kind of shocking that the U.S. is involved in this at all. And it's very strange because there's a lot of United USA Christians that like default side with Israel on things because of Israel's role in the Bible, which I think is maybe a bit there's some things taken out of context to justify that, but let's see what they're saying here.
It was suicide bombers blowing up on buses, in cafes, in malls across Israel. That is the reality I grew up to as a teenager. The Palestinians did everything they could to sabotage the peace accords. And on the Israeli side, our population strongly lost faith that there's a chance to really reach meaningful peace with the Palestinians. Many years down the line, we find out that Arafat's Second Intifada, that was marketed as this grassroots movement, wasn't as spontaneous as it was pegged to be. In fact, it was meticulously planned by the PLO, by the Palestinian Authority, to sabotage the peace with Israel. So how is...
It's also a little hard to take this guy seriously when he's like carrying a large firearm on his hip, or I guess on his he has a sling down his shoulder, but like, okay. It's tough. It's tough.
To sabotage the peace with Israel. So how is all of this related to the Gaza Strip and today's topic? Let's go back to the Gaza Strip. So from the 90s through the early 2000s, Gaza has a mix of Palestinian cities, which are the vast majority of the population, and Israeli communities that are spread out on the coast, on the eastern side, and in the north of the Gaza Strip. In the absence of peace negotiations with the Palestinians, and in response to the ongoing threat of terrorism, in 2005, the Israeli government, led by Ariel Sharon, does something that no one has ever done in history. We decided to pull out of the Gaza Strip with no agreement, with no preconditions, with no...
Bro just had a fly on his forehead. That's wild. Okay, sorry, I missed that.
We decided to pull out of the Gaza Strip with no agreement, with no preconditions, with nothing, just with a point to stop the violence, to stop the terrorism. Every Israeli citizen and soldier are pulled out of the Gaza Strip till the last one. It's important to know that this was not easy for the Israeli people. In fact, till this day, the 2005 disengagement from the Gaza Strip is considered to be one of the most divisive events in Israeli history. Till this day, people talk back to that event as one of the causes for our current political conflict. No more Israelis inside the Strip, no Israeli military presence. The Israeli-Gaza border crossings were to be used only for the passage of goods, aid, and individuals with permits from within Gaza into Israel or goods into Gaza.
So they're definitely being painted as, they're painting themselves as the good guys, which, like, I get it. I understand you're not going to paint your own country in a negative light, per se, but obviously there's a lot of different perspectives on this, and I'm still waiting to hear where some of that is, because obviously Israel is heavily involved in these conflicts. They're supposedly pulling out so that all of these really positive things can happen. However, if we're getting reports that there is a famine going on in Gaza, then how much of what we're hearing is true? That's the thing. Coming in uneducated on the topic, I feel like I need to be a bit skeptical, so that we can kind of ascertain exactly kind of the complex political inner workings of what's going on here.
Control of the Gaza-Egypt border was handed over to Egypt. And the expectation was that this move on our end would allow the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip to finally have the peace, to have the freedom that they wanted, to have the control of their own land, and to finally move away from violence. So Israel withdraws from the Gaza Strip in 2005, leaves behind the Palestinians, who a year later, in 2006, have national elections.
There's probably books worth of backgrounds to this. Yeah, definitely. It is hard to stream books, though. But if you have any that you can recommend to me for just my personal off-stream time, then I'm happy to hear it.
The Hamas wins. They don't win all the votes, but they win enough to overthrow the Fatah, the PLO, and they don't do this in the democratic way.
Okay, we've got Hamas here again.
The Hamas wins. They don't win from violence. So Israel withdraws from the Gaza Strip in 2005, leaves behind the Palestinians, who a year later, in 2006, have national elections. The Hamas wins. They don't win all the votes, but they win enough to overthrow the Fatah, the PLO, and they don't do this in the democratic way. They violently and murderously throw them out of the Gaza Strip. There have been no other elections since in Gaza.
Are you struggling in your calculus class?
No.
Do you have a hard time understanding your instructor?
No.
Do you wish...
So the Gaza Strip was now under Hamas control, which openly called and still calls for the destruction of the entire state of Israel. We continue to give them water. We continue to give them electricity. We continue to have tens of thousands of Palestinians work inside of Israel, and the violence continues from the Gaza Strip again and again and again.
With any other war, neighboring countries usually allow people to get out of the war zone. Yeah. But then, yeah. Oh, gotcha. So I missed your previous. One interesting thing is that Egypt doesn't allow people to flee from Gaza. With any other with any other war, neighboring country usually allow people to get out of the war zone. Yeah, that is interesting. That's definitely suspicious. Obviously, Hamas, not great leadership. At least based off of this video, Israel claiming to do a lot of great humanitarian things, but I'm still skeptical because of that article that we read of the actual situation going on in Gaza. And then of course it sounds like there's something weird going on with Egypt and the Gaza Strip. It's very strange, very odd. I'm skeptical. We still got a few minutes left of the video, so let's see if we can get a little more info.
The Israeli-Gaza border has been the crossing point of numerous terrorist attacks, abusing Israel's permits, coming into the country to kill soldiers and civilians alike. And the communities along the Israeli side of the border have become so accustomed to the rocket attacks from the Gazan side that everywhere you look, you'll see bomb shelters. With a hostile entity along its border, Israel resorted to tightening the border points between Israel and Gaza, saying, if you want open passage, at least recognize our country's right to exist. Since 2006, that has not yet happened. I think if there was anyone who had any doubts about how much of a necessity having a strong border with the Gaza Strip is, those doubts disappeared on October 7th with a vicious attack of the Hamas against the innocent civilians of Israel. There's this claim that's constantly made that Israel is the one that controls all the entry and exit of the Gaza Strip, but that's of course not true. Israel controls the eastern side and the northern side bordering with Israel, but they have...
That is still like 90%.
a whole big border that borders with the Egyptians. And that border is controlled by the Egyptians since 2005. So who benefits the misleading statement that Gaza is a prison controlled by Israel? There are ulterior motives at play here. Hamas are a terrorist group that is part of Iran's network. It's Iran fighting through Hamas, attacking Israel. The biggest victims of the Hamas actions and the Iranian government behind them are the Palestinian people living in the Gaza Strip. If you've seen any of the footage coming out of the Gaza Strip lately, it's impossible not to feel empathy and compassion for the people of that strip. The Hamas took the water pipes that were donated and they used it for rockets. They took the fertilizer meant for building the land and used it for explosives. They took the construction materials continuously brought in to build tunnels to attack Israel, because the Hamas policy has been destructive and devastating to the people of the Gaza Strip. That is the reality of what's happening on the ground.
So it does sound like maybe there has been some effort for humanitarian aid on behalf of Israel. And Hamas has taken and used that aid back against Israel and at the expense of the people who needs that aid. There's a lot of mentions of bombing from Hamas to Israel. I believe, I could be misinformed because this was a while ago. This conflict has been going on for a while. I'm displaced from this conflict. I believe there was bombing from Israel to Gaza. And that's the thing that I'm still a little baffled about. We got like 30 seconds of video left. I doubt they're going to cover it, but let's see.
So where does this all leave us? What do we do with all this information? We have to understand how important it is to have a strong border between Israel and the Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The people of Gaza deserve a peaceful life. They deserve prosperity. They deserve quiet, as do the people of Israel. And with Hamas in control of the Gaza Strip, that's simply never going to happen. If Gaza is a prison, then Hamas are the prison guards.
All right, that I can get a little bit, but again, strange things happening on the border. Let's see. So that was an Israeli source. Let's see. If there's something else that can show us a different perspective. Yeah, okay, there was a hospital bombing in Gaza. That's what I'm remembering. Oh, we have videos posted 2 days ago. Let's see. Let's check out. Just trying to find a credible source here. Hamas has this strategy of mixing military and civilian stuff. They take hospital buildings and use some rooms to store munitions. And then when it gets blown up, they say Israel bombs our hospitals. Oh, okay. I could see that. I could definitely see that. It does, again, being displaced from it so far, that's kind of a PR nightmare, which I can see why that would benefit Hamas if they're like, oh, Israel's bombing hospitals. Let's take a look. I tend to trust BBC News. So let's see what they have to say.
Would this make you buy a Ridge wallet? 2 people could win a Lamborghini Huracan Sterrato.
I need that ad block.
We start with news from Gaza. At least 15 people, including 4 journalists working for international media, have been killed by 2 Israeli military strikes on Nasser Hospital in southern Gaza. These are the latest pictures we're getting from the scene, showing smoke rising from the main hospital in southern Gaza and a group of people rushing the injured inside. Al Jazeera is reporting that among the dead is one of their cameramen, Mohammed Salama. The Reuters news agency has also confirmed that a cameraman working for it, Hussam al-Masri, was among those killed. The other journalists killed are said to work with Associated Press and the American TV network NBC. Well, there wasn't 1, but 2 strikes on the hospital. The second attack hit the rescue workers at the scene. These pictures are from Al Ghad television. After the initial blast, people were seen trying to help the injured. Just moments later, there was a second hit. Those on the stairs were immediately...
Okay, that's a little tough to say that it's just to blow up munitions and, what did you say? Just munitions. It's tough to say that it's just targeting Hamas when there's a relief effort actively going on with civilians.
Covered in dust and debris. We've not heard how many, if any, survived. A short time ago, we spoke to Fadi Umar, who's a programs officer with the charity SKT Welfare. He's based just outside Nasser Hospital. I asked him how big the hospital is and how many people were there at the time.
Many people, thousands of people, are according to numbers that comes every day, because it's the only hospital in this city. It is serve approximately 900,000 people at Khan Yunis city. So what's happening today was a crime, a big crime. The photos that shows and what we are seeing our eyes, that journalists were taking their usual photos from the top of Nasser Hospital and sending their reports, press reports, especially since Nasser Hospital overlooks the camps, and many journalists appear with this view. Within this view, the journalists were targeted by a drone. This is the first hit for the Nasser drone carrying explosive, and they were killed instantly. 5 minutes later, civil defense personnel and some journalists presents in the location. After that, after they arrived, they targeted the same place again. None of the attacks had any prior warnings. None of these attacks. Nasser Hospital is currently, as I mentioned before, the only hospital in the city, and approximately 900,000 people rely on it for treatment. Despite this, it is targeted suddenly, which increases the number of casualties at this action. This toll now rose to 15, including 5 journalists, as a result of the Israel bombing of the Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis. Government media office at this time in Gaza.
Sorry, I was just going to ask you whether they've had to evacuate the hospital at all, or what's happening with the patients at the moment.
There is some evacuation for some in the same buildings, but the hospital is big enough, and there is no place that you can evacuate the patient to it. There is no another hospital at the same city. There is another hospital that's far away from Nasser Hospital in Deir al-Balah, and but it is a Shuhada al-Aqsa. But this hospital is smaller than the Nasser Hospital. So there is no central hospital that you can evacuate the patient to it. So
it does look to be a lot of civilians affected by this, especially like when a third of the people who died are reporters. They're a part of the press. And then the second bombing also makes things a little bit suspicious, to say. Like, yeah, I get from the Israeli standpoint, if Hamas is setting up in hospitals, like, it becomes a target. But at least from the footage that we're seeing here, it looks like people not involved, people who are just either press or they are hospitalized for some reason, they are being affected. And that is not good. That is bad. That is tragic. And so I don't know if this was a targeted thing, or if it was look, we are going to intentionally bomb the hospital with the intention of targeting Hamas, and oh no, there's civilians there and we messed up. But all of this death and destruction, it sounds like there's no place to actually evacuate people. Like, you've got to see how this comes across, even if it is a partially political and partially civilian movement. Again, I don't personally know enough about the situation to be able to say, but like, I think we at least need to agree that a non-zero amount of innocent people are dying, and that is it's an understatement, but that's bad, that's sad, that's not good, it's a tragedy, and we need to come to some sort of resolution. Unfortunately, it seems like Hamas is hell-bent on the destruction of Israel, And Israel, understandably, is not a fan of that, but is also not not cooperating in peace-like ways, and that's a bit of a challenge. Definitely a challenge for me in figuring all of this out. But let's see what they have to say.
So it is a disaster for that. So a lot of patients are still in their beds, and there is no place to go to it, because if they are leaving the hospital, they are face death.
With the release of GPT-5, Augment Code now has a model picker you can pick from. And
just a reminder that the Israeli military and the Prime Minister's office have had no immediate comment regarding the strikes. And let's get more from our correspondent Yulan Nell.
That is also suspicious.
Who joins us live from Jerusalem. So it's been a very busy morning. Bring us right up to date with that latest on the strike in Gaza, the strikes in Gaza.
So we've had comments from some of the different news agencies whose journalists have been killed. Reuters confirming that Hussam al-Masri, who was working for the news agency, was killed. They're saying he was operating their live camera feed, which is sometimes being used by the BBC to show the scenes in Khan Yunis, that big southern city in Gaza. This camera feed shut down at the time of the initial strike, Reuters says. Another Reuters worker was also injured. The Associated Press said it was shocked and saddened in a statement about the killing of Mariam Abu Daka, a 33-year-old journalist who had been working as a freelance journalist with that news agency since the start of the war 22 months ago, and she had often been based at the hospital, the agency said. Al Jazeera confirmed its cameraman Mohammed Salama was killed, and Muaz Abu Taha, the fourth journalist killed, is reported to have worked for the US network for NBC.
Even if Israel is targeting Hamas at this hospital, obviously it's killing civilians. And I think strategically, I get why Hamas would want to set up in hospitals. I don't think Israel needs to take that bait. And even if that's exactly what happened, is that Hamas was set up in this hospital, and then I don't know if it's wise for Israel to take action knowing that innocent people would be used as a shield, essentially. I don't know.
The Gazan civil defense says that one of its rescuers was killed, and witnesses have said that the second strike took place after rescue workers and journalists went to the aid of the casualties from that initial attack. We think that was the Reuters position on the roof. As you're saying, we've asked the Israeli military for comments on this, and they've said that they're looking into it. This has been one of the bloodiest conflicts for journalists. The Committee to Protect Journalists says that more than 190 journalists have been killed since the start of the war. And, you know, just to explain to people a little, that journalists are often based at the hospitals in Gaza because this is the location where they can get internet and they're able to send their reports to the outside world. And of course, they're often following the casualties. They're there so they can verify numbers of dead and speak to patients who are arriving.
And Yolande, this comes as there are reports that the Israeli military may be a little bit in dissent with the government over the prospects for continuing the offensives in Gaza. Tell us a little bit about what's been going on that front.
Yeah, so Israeli media really dominated by reports of tensions between the military and the government. As we're told that the Israeli Security Cabinet, the Prime Minister leading that, is due to meet tomorrow evening to discuss the latest developments in the Gaza war and to discuss this latest ceasefire and hostage deal proposal that's been put forward by regional mediators by Qatar and Egypt, which Hamas signed up to a week ago. It's very similar to a deal that Israel previously previously agreed to. But since then, since the last round of indirect talks with Hamas collapsed, Israel has been saying it will only accept a comprehensive deal to bring home all of the hostages at once and end the war on terms that it finds acceptable. Now, there are reports in the Israeli media that the military chief of staff has said that there is a deal on the table and it needs to be taken, that the Israeli military has in effect put pressure on Hamas to get to this point, has created the conditions for the hostage deal, the words that are quoted. Now it's in Netanyahu's hands, and saying that going ahead with this plan to conquer Gaza City will endanger the lives of the hostages. That is something that the Hostages and Missing Families Forum also fears, and they are calling for a big day of protest tomorrow.
It sounds like there's not even unity in Israel over this issue. And so how are we, I say we, but we in the general sense, how is there going to be peace in this conflict if there's not even unity on how to approach the situation? We have, sounds like the Israeli government working on some sort of peaceful method of getting hostages back safe, and then the military applying hostile pressure, and seems to be, I don't know, as someone not educated in military tactics and geopolitics, like it seems like how can there be a resolution to this if one side cannot even agree on whether they want to be aggressive or peaceful in a given situation. Okay, I want to look at one more video and then maybe we'll wrap up, because that was a British one. I do want to look at an United States perspective on this. And they said it was something about NBC reporters, so let's look and see what NBC has to say.
Got breaking news out of Gaza. An airstrike at a hospital has killed at least 19 people, including 4 journalists. That's according to Palestinian health officials. One of the journalists killed was a freelancer who had been working for the Associated Press. Al Jazeera and Reuters have also confirmed their journalists and freelancers died in the strike. Israel's defense forces responded to the reports, announcing plans to conduct an initial inquiry as soon as possible. It adds, the IDF regrets any harm to uninvolved individuals and does not target journalists as such. The IDF acts to mitigate harm to uninvolved individuals as much as possible, while maintaining the safety of IDF troops. Jonathan, what more can you add to this?
Yeah, so this is from Reuters just now, a few moments ago. It's a developing story. Things are still fluid, but Reuters also confirms that one of its journalists, a man named Hussam al-Masri, was killed in this strike, but adds this detail. There had been apparently an initial strike at the hospital at a hospital in Gaza. Journalists and rescue workers then responded to the scene
to cover it,
to help people, whatever, to check the damage, to see what's going on, and then a second strike came. So that's why these rescue workers and journalists were killed, because they were responding to the hospital. Israel hit it again. That's according to Reuters, which said they had a live stream on the hospital that, of course, then went dark when the strike hit. So for more, let's now bring in NBC News international correspondent Molly Hunter, who joins us live from Jerusalem. Molly, what more can you tell us?
Jonathan, Mika, you guys have laid it out really well. So it happened around 10 a.m. this morning. And for context, to give our audience a lay of the land, Nasser Hospital is the largest, the only functioning hospital in the south. And the part of Nasser Hospital that was hit, you guys, is really important. You can see it in the videos. It was a staircase. And the reason this staircase was targeted very clearly is that this is where journalists since the early days of the war have gathered to get Wi-Fi signal. We have seen videos they've posted on social media. Our team, which used to work right close close to that staircase would share videos of them holding their phones to the sky, kind of huddled over laptops in the wee hours of the night. But journalists, since the beginning of this war, you guys, since they have been personally displaced, have flocked to hospitals to use resources like Wi-Fi, to use power, to use water. So this staircase, journalists were on the staircase this morning when it was struck around 10 a.m. And as Jonathan just laid out, minutes later, as first responders were racing up to that area, as other journalists in the area were going to cover the strike, another drone strike hit that same exact spot. Mika, we actually have updates from the numbers that you just read. As Jonathan says, this is a very fast-moving story. It is now at least 20 people killed, including 5 journalists. As you mentioned, AP, Reuters, and Al Jazeera have all said that at least 3 of those journalists were working for them. And this brings the total of journalists killed in Gaza since October 7th to 245 journalists, media workers. These are our colleagues, our peers who have been killed in the last 22 months, guys.
NBC's Molly Hunter live in Jerusalem. Thank you. And Mika, we should underscore a few things here. First of all, the IDF has blocked most outside journalists from getting into Gaza to cover this. So a lot of these are local journalists. That's an extraordinary number. 245 of our colleagues killed there, more so than many conflicts that have lasted much longer than this one. And the New York Times makes a good point over the weekend in sort of their coverage of the conflict here, that the ultra-Orthodox there in Israel, who might be compelled into military service. We know in Israel, you're supposed to do a tenure of a couple of years. The ultra-Orthodox have been accepted from that. That may change. There's a real anger there, some real outrage from that community. Yet they're also the ones who are driving a lot of Bibi Netanyahu's decisions, because they make up a big part of his coalition. Without them, he wouldn't be able to govern. He'd probably be snap elections. He might lose. And there's real fear, as the Times pointed out, that Gaza, this has been a goal of this community for a while, to get Gaza, also the West Bank. And we're seeing more and more settler violence there as well. The whole situation, a real tinderbox. And again, we'll have more on this strike as news comes out, as it develops, but it seems like an unspeakable tragedy this morning, Mike.
We should also point out that this is far from the first time this has happened, involving ordinary citizens and journalists. A double attack, drone attacks, not the first time.
Molly pointing out that the staircase is where journalists gather to... okay.
Yeah, that's... additionally suspicious, I think. The fact that that's a known place where the journalists would congregate. And it sounds like maybe it's not NBC employees. I think I may have misspoke. I may have misheard something. But at the very least, it's still people of the press who are getting information back to news networks around the world. And it definitely seems like potentially a targeted attack on the press from just like preliminary looking at a couple of different news sources, and it looks like that might line up well with what we read in the article earlier about Israel denying claims that there is a famine in Gaza, because if they want to deny claims that there is a famine, and there are reporters actively reporting and sending information and photos and videos back showing that there's a famine, then their story doesn't quite line up. So I feel at least a little more educated than I was an hour ago on this topic, which is good. I have been personally feeling, just as a Christian American, like there's a lot of different strong perspectives on these issues, and I haven't really been sure where to start. And it's given me a little bit of what's called like analysis paralysis, where there's just like so much information that you're not really sure what to do with it. And as much as I've wanted to be informed, I haven't really had a place to start, and this presented as an opportunity to do so, and so I wanted to take it. So it's not usually something that we talk about on our streams here, but there is definitely a large overlap of Christians in the United States who more or less blindly support Israel based off of their role in the Bible. And when we take a look at the things that are said about Israel in the Bible, it's talking about Israel as in the people of Israel, the tribes, the kingdoms, the people who came back from exile, and not the nation that was formed much, much later. And so it can be a little bit tricky to unravel all of that stuff, but it's our responsibility as Christians who are viewing the tragedy that is going on and have some sort of religious tie to Israel, whatever that might be. We need to do the work to untangle those things, and especially as people, as someone in my position who is potentially going to receive questions about things like this that are going on, then I definitely need to be informed. And so I think this was definitely a great first step for me in being a little more informed about what was going on. We talked a little bit about books that may be helpful. If you have any recommendations, please let me know. Join the Discord and we can talk a little bit more about it there. I am going to be wrapping up for today. It has been kind of a crazy week, and like I said at the top of the stream, it's been nonstop between not feeling well and then hospital scare for my daughter, and then jumping right back into work with stuff that we have going on coming up in the next month and a half. It's just been wild. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Again, check out the link tree in the description below. It'll take you to everything that we are doing to try to bring the church to you online, and join our Discord or our Facebook group if that's better for you, where we can kind of keep the discussion going. So I just want to say thank you, and hope you have a great rest of your day or evening or wherever you're watching from. Thank you for